Part 1, Some people spend 20 years proving they were never going to become anything, Travis Kincaid said, lifting his glass just high enough for the people nearest him to hear.
Look at them, the townies.
The Hawthorne
Not
Grand
dressed for the
Ballroom made
occasion.
everyone look more successful than they remembered being.
We don't need their approval.
Senior photographs moved
our
across a
projections are
wall-sized
consistently
screen
ahead of
while
schedule.
former classmates
That's a
compared
strong
promotions,
number.
houses,
We expect to see a
and
20%
children beneath
increase
3
by next quarter.
chandeliers.
The simulation
Evan
shows
hardly
significant
entered through the
potential
side
here.
doors
We
with
need
his
to consider the
8-year-old daughter,
scalability before
Molly,
committing.
holding his hand.
Agreed. Let's look at the flow
His
diagram
shirt
again.
was simple and one
I
shoe had
made
been
this for
repaired.
you.
Thank
Molly
you,
carried her
sweetheart,
mother's small
but I
metal
can't
airplane
stay.
while searching the yearbook display for Grace's face. Evan had almost
think I
turned
see
around
it.
before signing in. Then Molly saw Grace at
What is
17 on the screen and
The
smiled.
target zone.
That was enough to make him stay. Travis noticed him less than a minute later. He stood near the center of the room in a dark suit with a silver executive badge from Novacore Dynamics, surrounded by people who laughed half a second after he did. "Hartley," he called. "I heard you're doing maintenance at some community college." "That's right. Still changing light bulbs and fixing doors." Several people looked away. Others waited. Evan adjusted the collar of Molly's coat. "Do you want another look at the photographs?" Travis stepped closer. "You know, a responsible father should show his daughter what success looks like." Molly lowered the airplane. Evan's hand settled gently over hers. He had learned that humiliation became heavier when a child had to carry part of it. "We were just leaving," he said. He turned toward the doors. At that moment, the entrance from the investor reception next door opened. Audrey Whitmore walked in wearing a Navy executive dress, followed by Novacore's chief financial officer and 2 members of the board. She scanned the room once, saw Evan, and changed direction immediately. Travis smiled as she approached, certain she had come for him. He straightened his jacket and began to introduce himself. Audrey walked past his waiting hand. She stopped beside Evan. The room quieted one conversation at a time. Travis gave a small laugh. "There's been a misunderstanding. He's part of the reunion." Audrey did not look away from Evan. "I know who he is. He probably wandered into the wrong event." Audrey turned toward Travis with an expression so calm it removed the last trace of humor from his face. "No," she said. "He's with me." 4 words changed the room. A champagne glass stopped halfway to someone's mouth. Molly looked from Audrey to her father, trying to understand why this woman had been waiting for him. Through the open doors, a 20-foot display showed Novacore's Helios industrial protection system wrapped around a digital factory model. Near the lower corner of the schematic was a small wing-shaped mark. Molly looked down at the metal airplane in her hands. Travis saw the connection a second too late. Audrey faced him. Why was Evan Hartley's name removed from the design that made this company $90 million? No one answered. Then every display in the investor hall changed from blue to red. The factory model stopped in the middle of its cycle. A warning tone spread through both rooms. Evan looked at the screen, then at Travis. "That isn't the only thing you removed," he said. Part 2 that morning had begun at 5:42 in a kitchen too small for 2 people to move through without learning each other's rhythm. Evan stood beside the stove making scrambled eggs while Molly sat at the table with the metal airplane spread across a folded dish towel. One wing had come loose again. She held it steady while he tightened a tiny screw with a tool from the wooden box beneath the sink. Grace had bought the airplane during the first year of their marriage, when Evan traveled constantly and they still believed there would always be more time. For years after her death, it remained beside her photograph on Molly's shelf. Evan repaired it whenever something loosened, replacing as little as possible. At 34, Evan worked in the maintenance department at Westbridge Community College. He repaired doors, heating systems, laboratory equipment, electrical panels, and everything people noticed only after it stopped working. The job paid less than half of what he once earned designing industrial protection systems. It also allowed him to drive Molly to school, attend parent meetings, and be waiting when classes ended. Before Grace became ill, Evan could study a factory for 10 minutes and see the failure no one else had considered. Companies paid him well for that ability. Grace paid for it differently. He missed treatment consultations and joined Molly's birthday by video from an airport. The night Grace entered intensive care, he was in another state defending a design. By the time he reached the hospital, Grace was awake but too tired to argue. "You build systems that expect people to make mistakes," she whispered. "Why don't you build a life that can survive one?" Evan promised he would change. Grace died before he learned how. Afterward, he left the industry entirely. He told people he wanted stable hours. He did not tell them that every control room sounded like the night he arrived too late. Molly found the reunion invitation beneath a stack of mail while searching for construction paper. Then she found the old yearbook and turned the pages until she saw Grace standing beside Evan near the school auditorium. "That's where you met Mom?" "Yes." "Then I want to see it." Evan knew Travis would attend. The invitation listed him as a featured alumnus and executive vice president of product strategy at Novacore Dynamics. 7 years earlier, Travis had promised to present Evan's Helios proposal. Months later, Evan's name disappeared, the company called it an incomplete concept, and Grace's diagnosis made a legal battle feel like another form of absence. Evan accepted payment for consulting hours, not authorship, but stopped fighting long enough for Travis's history to harden. "We can stay for 1 hour," Evan told Molly. His phone lit up before they left. A third message from Audrey Whitmore waited beneath 2 he had not answered. She identified herself as Novacore's chief executive officer and asked for a private meeting about Helios. Evan almost deleted it. Then he opened the attached image. The system still carried Grace's wing mark beside the primary safety path. But the third feedback circuit was missing, and a laboratory calibration port appeared. To have been converted into remote software access. It was cheaper. It was also dangerous. Audrey's final sentence remained on the screen. "There is something inside our system only you can recognize." Evan looked at the airplane on the table. Molly had tightened one wing too far. The metal had begun to bend around the screw. "Sometimes," he told her, loosening it gently, "making something tighter doesn't make it safer." He did not yet understand that the same lesson was waiting at the hotel. Part 3. The warning tone continued for 11 seconds before the investor hall fell into a silence heavier than the sound itself. Audrey looked at Evan, not at the frozen factory model. "This is why I asked you to come." For 3 weeks, Helios had passed scheduled tests and then rejected commands during live simulations. One factory delayed installation, insurers requested new evidence, and tonight's demonstration was meant to reassure investors before deployment to 12 plants. Travis stepped toward the control room. A demonstration fault does not prove anything about the architecture. Evan studied the red diagram through the open doors. Helios originally used 3 paths: pressure, temperature, and an independent mechanical baseline. Travis's version removed the third. When the first 2 disagreed, the controller had no way to decide which warning was real. "It isn't broken," Evan said. "It's protecting itself from a question it was never allowed to answer." Audrey turned to Travis. "Who approved removing the third circuit?" "It was redundant hardware." "Who approved it?" "A commercial review team." "Led by whom?" Travis did not answer. An engineer appeared in the doorway. "The controller has entered protective lockout. We cannot restart the model." Above the control station, a demonstration clock showed 7 minutes and 48 seconds. Investors were already taking their seats. Travis pointed toward Evan. "He has no authorization to enter that room. He has been outside the company for 7 years." Audrey asked Evan what would happen if Helios were installed in its current form. "Most of the time, it shuts down safely. That's why the problem stayed hidden. But if one reading is false while the other reflects a real mechanical failure, the controller can hesitate before choosing the wrong response." "How long?" Long enough for workers to trust a system that no longer understands its own information. The problem was no longer only a failed presentation. Evan picked up Molly's coat. "We should go." Travis smiled too quickly. "That would be best." Molly did not move. "Why are we leaving if you know what's wrong?" Evan crouched until they were eye level. "Because this is not my company. But people work there." He glanced toward the classmates who had laughed and the executives who had ignored his name for 7 years. Molly lowered her voice. "Does the right thing become wrong because they were mean first?" The question was not polished. That made it harder to avoid. Grace believed good systems expected mistakes and protected people anyway. Evan had never considered that walking away could become another kind of absence. Travis ordered hotel security to escort him from the investor floor. Audrey stepped between them and removed the executive access card from her lanyard. "He is not leaving." Travis warned that allowing an outsider into the control room could expose NovaCore to liability. Audrey looked at the red screen. "The liability is already running the demonstration." She handed Evan the card. The control room door unlocked. Inside, 6 engineers turned toward him, frustrated and exhausted. Evan placed Molly's airplane beside the main terminal and asked for the earliest complete design, the hardware map, the diagnostic stream, and every revision approved after his original submission. "What else?" Audrey asked. Evan looked at the countdown. "The engineers need permission to tell me what they were told not to write down." Audrey closed the door behind them. "You have it." Part 4. The archive design opened with Evan's name attached. 3 safety paths ran beside Grace's wing mark. In the current revision, the third circuit was gone. The physical calibration switch was also gone. Evan's design required a key inside the cabinet, separating laboratory commands from live equipment. In the current version, the same test path had become a software service called EH03. Evan stared at the letters. His initials. Before he could ask who had restored the service, a security analyst entered carrying a tablet. "We found the command that initiated the shutdown," she said. The room went still. The command had arrived through the hotel network 4 minutes after Evan entered the ballroom. Its credential identifier was EH03. The account was registered to an old consulting profile bearing Evan's name. Travis appeared at the glass door almost immediately. "There it is," he said. "He triggered the failure, then walked in pretending to save us." Several engineers stopped working. Audrey looked at Evan. "Did you create this account?" "I created the identifier for an offline laboratory key." "That is not what she asked," Travis said. Evan kept his eyes on Audrey. "Yes. The name came from me." The admission changed the room more than denial would have. Travis entered. He built a private access path, disappeared for 7 years, and returned on the night the system failed. "How much more do you need?" Evan opened the original logic. This path could not receive a network command. It required a physical key and a local relay. "And yet your identifier caused the shutdown." "Because someone changed what the identifier could do." The analyst enlarged the connection record. The request had come from the hotel guest network, but the device signature was incomplete. Travis said Evan's old laptop was in the ballroom. It was. Audrey asked whether it had connected to the hotel network. The analyst checked. The device joined at 8:59. The command had been issued at 8:57. For a moment, relief moved through the room. Then the analyst continued. However, a paired maintenance token registered to Mr. Hartley's original consulting package authenticated at 8:56. Travis placed a small black device on the desk. Security had found it inside the demonstration case Evan asked the engineers to open. His old project number was etched into the side. Evan recognized the casing. He had built 6 prototype commissioning tokens, one remained in a sealed equipment crate after the Dispute. Travis faced Audrey. He knew exactly where it would be. Evan's hand tightened around the back of a chair. Now his name, identifier, and hardware sat inside the failure. Audrey removed her access card from the terminal. "Step away from the system," she said. Molly watched through the glass as her father obeyed. The warning tone continued. The countdown reached 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Travis told the engineers to restore the last approved configuration. Evan looked at the token one more time. A thin copper strip crossed its lower edge. The original units did not have that strip. Someone had rebuilt the inside. "Do not insert that into anything," he said. Travis smiled. "Still giving orders?" "No," Evan looked at Audrey. "I'm telling you the token is not mine anymore." Part 5. Audrey moved the token beneath the inspection camera. The manufacturing drawing showed a local chip, mechanical contact, and no wireless component. The token on the desk contained a newer circuit. "It broadcasts," Evan said. The security analyst scanned it. A short-range wireless module responded. Travis dismissed the change as a routine modernization. "Who authorized it?" Audrey asked. "The commissioning team." The chief engineer shook his head. "My team never received this device." Grant Barlow, Novacore's chief financial officer, began searching purchase records. The replacement circuit had been ordered through executive operations 18 months earlier and charged to the investor demonstration budget. Travis leaned over the desk. "Anyone in my office could have approved a small component." Grant opened the digital authorization. Travis's signature appeared at the bottom. The evidence still did not prove who sent the command. The token and service retained Evan's identity, leaving motive and access open to argument. Evan understood that records alone would not be enough. "We can reproduce it," he said. Audrey looked at the clock. 3 minutes and 20 seconds. "Explain." "Disconnect the model from the hotel network. Put it on an isolated loop. Send the same conflicting sensor readings twice. First with the current architecture. Then with the original physical. Boundary restored." Travis objected. "He is asking to modify evidence while under suspicion. I am asking the system to repeat its behavior where no outside device can reach it." Audrey studied Evan. "And if the failure follows your original identifier? Then remove me, preserve everything, and call law enforcement." Molly heard him through the glass. She pressed the airplane against her coat. Audrey returned the access card to the terminal. One isolated test. Every action recorded. Evan re-entered the control room under the engineer's cautious eyes. He requested a spare processor, 2 relays, the original interface module, and an evidence bag. The hotel cable was removed while cameras recorded the empty ports. Evan loaded the current Helios revision and instructed the engineers to simulate a rising pressure signal against a false temperature reading. Both signals entered the controller. Without the third circuit, Helios could not choose. Amber turned red, and EH-03 opened automatically without a command. The altered architecture treated disagreement as permission to open the remote calibration path. A red line appeared on the monitor and crossed directly into the shutdown controller. The factory model locked again. Travis said the behavior proved Evan's service path was defective. Evan opened the original design. "In my version, disagreement closes the calibration path." He restored the physical isolation relay and the third feedback circuit inside the isolated test loop. The wing-shaped mark appeared beside the new connection. They ran the same signals again. Pressure rose. Temperature reported a false drop. The mechanical baseline compared both readings and identified the false signal. The calibration path remained closed. One section of the factory model turned green. Then another. The warning tone stopped. Evan did not celebrate. "Run it again," he said. They repeated the test under several failures while the token broadcast beside the cabinet. The original boundary rejected it every time. Grant opened the revision history while the final test ran. The physical isolation relay had been removed in a cost reduction package. The third feedback circuit had been deleted in the same revision. 2 junior engineers had objected. Their reports were marked resolved without signatures. The approval account belonged to executive operations. Travis looked toward the door. Audrey was already standing in front of it. Part 6. Travis did not deny authorizing the redesign. He changed the meaning of it. Helios could never have reached the market at Evan's cost, he said. His version was overbuilt, difficult to commission, and too expensive for mid-sized factories. We simplified it. We created the business that paid every person in this room. He faced the board members beyond the glass. The system failed safely tonight. No one was hurt. That is what protection systems are supposed to do. His argument sounded reasonable enough to be dangerous. Audrey looked at Evan. Is he right about the cost? Evan did not protect his pride. The original version cost more. How much? About 8% per installation. Travis spread his hands. Across 12 plants, that difference decides whether the product exists. Several investors shifted. A board member asked whether the third circuit was legally required. No, Travis said before Evan could answer. He was correct. No regulation specifically required the circuit. The choice lived between legal minimums and engineering knowledge. Audrey asked Evan why he had not fought harder when his name was removed. The question landed differently from the others. Evan looked through the glass at Molly. Grace had just started treatment. A lawsuit meant depositions, travel, and another year proving I belonged in rooms that had already decided I didn't. I took the consulting payment and went home. Travis seized the answer. He accepted the settlement. I accepted payment for my hours. I did not sell authorship, and I did not approve the redesign. You stopped objecting. Yes. The admission surprised everyone, including Molly. Travis had stolen his work, but Evan had chosen silence because it let him stay beside Grace. He would choose that time again, yet could no longer pretend silence carried no consequence. I left the design with people I knew did not respect its limits, he said. I told myself walking away ended my responsibility. It didn't. Molly opened the control room door before Jenna Collins could stop her. She placed the airplane on the desk beside the wing symbol glowing on the monitor. Mom said you came home, she said. Evan looked at her. She never said you gave up. The room became still. Molly pointed toward the green factory model. Can you fix this without leaving again? Evan could repair Helios. He was less certain he could return without becoming the man who missed hospital rooms and birthdays. Audrey seemed to understand. I am not asking you to come back to Novacore tonight, she said. I am asking whether the 12 installations can be made safe. They can. What would it require? Restore independent verification. Restore the physical boundary. Retest every failure mode. And let the engineers report directly to someone whose bonus does not depend on the answer. Travis called the proposal an attack on executive authority. Audrey looked at the falsified safety reviews on Grant's screen. No, she said. This is what authority looks like after trust is gone. She ordered Travis's access suspended and the demonstration postponed. Security asked for his executive badge. He stared at Evan as he removed it. You think one repair makes you the owner of this company? Evan looked at the metal airplane, then at the system carrying his erased name. No, he said. It makes me responsible for what I know now. Part 7. The investor hall did not receive the demonstration it had been promised. Instead, Audrey ordered the original and current Helios designs projected side by side on the main screen. The audience watched the third circuit disappear, the physical boundary become remote access, and 2 safety objections close without signatures. Audrey accused no one of sabotage. She presented only what the records proved. Evan's authorship was removed, the architecture reduced without independent approval, and demonstration hardware modified through Travis's office. Helios failed exactly as the missing circuit predicted. Then Evan asked the engineers to run the isolated test on the large screen. The current version received conflicting signals. 2 red indicators appeared. The remote service opened. The factory stopped. The original safety boundary was restored. The same conflict entered again. A third green path compared both signals with the mechanical baseline. The false reading was rejected. The model continued moving. In less than a minute, people understood what pages of logs could not explain. Travis stood near the rear doors without the classmates who had gathered around him earlier. He insisted the changes had been necessary to meet price targets. A junior engineer named Priya Shah stepped forward from the control team. "We proposed a lower-cost third circuit," she said. Executive operations rejected it because certification would delay launch by 6 weeks. Grant opened her report. It had been categorized as a formatting issue and closed. A second engineer admitted he had been instructed to remove the words "unresolved safety conflict" from an investor summary. The room simply stopped organizing itself around Travis's version. Audrey announced that every Helios installation would be suspended pending independent review. Novacor would notify the 12 factories before morning and provide the original failure data to their safety teams. One investor asked what the delay would cost. Grant gave an estimate large enough to make the room inhale. Audrey did not soften it. "Less than asking 9,000 workers to trust information we know is incomplete." Evan stood beside Molly near the edge of the stage. His name appeared on the original design above them. He had imagined that moment years ago. In those fantasies, recognition felt like victory. In reality, it felt smaller than Molly's hand inside his. Audrey approached him after the announcement. "I need you to lead the technical review." Evan answered before she finished. "No," Molly looked up, but Audrey did not seem surprised. "I came to identify the failure," he said. "I did that. I am not rebuilding the life I left." "Then do not rebuild it." Evan waited. Audrey continued. "Design a different one." He looked across the hall at the control room, the engineers, and the screens that had once carried his work without his name. Urgency was already asking for nights, weekends, and every movable promise. Molly turned the airplane in her hands. The repaired wing had loosened again. "Dad," she said, "you always fix it when something comes loose. You don't have to hold it forever." Evan took the airplane and examined the screw. She was right. Tightening it repeatedly was not a permanent repair. The worn thread needed a new insert, not more force. So did his life. He faced Audrey. "The review team controls its own safety findings. No sales office can edit classifications. I work from Westbridge 3 days a week. School pickup stays blocked. If Molly needs me, the meeting moves." Audrey nodded. "Agreed. And the engineers whose reports were buried stay protected." "Agreed." Evan looked at Molly. She did not decide for him. She only waited. "I will lead the review," he said. "Until Helios is safe." Part 8. The investigation lasted 10 weeks. An outside compliance firm reviewed every Helios revision, purchasing record, access credential, and safety report created during the previous 7 years. The findings were more complicated than the reunion story. Travis had not personally pressed a button to stop the demonstration. He had authorized the modified wireless token so his team could trigger predictable faults during investor rehearsals and then showcase rapid recovery. The tool was meant to make Helios look reliable by controlling when it failed. But the current architecture no longer contained the physical boundary that made such testing safe. At the reunion, an automated rehearsal script detected the token, opened EH-03, and sent a calibration command into the live model. Travis's team had scheduled it and concealed earlier failures, creating the conditions before blaming Evan. Novacore terminated his employment. His bonuses were frozen pending legal review. The company corrected the authorship record and acknowledged Evan as Helios's original safety architect. The two engineers whose reports had been buried were promoted into an independent safety office reporting directly to the board. Evan did not move into Novacore headquarters. He converted a Westbridge controls laboratory into the Helios Review Center, where engineers tested sensor damage, power loss, delays, and failures no sales presentation wanted to imagine. At 3 o'clock every afternoon, Evan left. No meeting was allowed to cross the school pickup block on his calendar. At first, he still checked his phone during Molly's stories. By the fourth week, Novacore had learned that a system depending on one person's constant availability was another unsafe system. 12 weeks after the reunion, Helios completed 200 simulated conflicts without accepting a false signal or opening the calibration path remotely. The redesigned verifier cost less than the original circuit because Priya's team developed the lower-cost version Travis had refused to certify. The factories kept their contracts after disclosure and requested direct access to future test results. Audrey offered Evan a permanent title, Chief Safety Architecture Officer. He declined the corner office, the company car, and the travel schedule attached to it. He accepted a different role written around the conditions he had set, Independent Director of Systems Safety, based at Westbridge, with authority to stop a launch and no authority to hide why. The compensation repaired their roof and funded a scholarship in Grace's name for student caregivers. One evening, Molly found him at the kitchen table repairing the airplane again. This time, he removed the worn screw completely and fitted a tiny threaded insert into the wing. "You replaced part of it," she said. "I replaced the part that kept failing." "Is it still Mom's?" Evan turned the airplane in his hand. "Yes." Molly considered that answer, then smiled. Evan had believed preserving something meant refusing to change it. Helios showed the opposite danger, changing what people did not understand and calling it progress. The lesson was knowing what carried safety, memory, and what needed rebuilding. Part 9. 3 months later, Westbridge Community College hosted its annual Family Engineering Night inside the converted Helios laboratory. Tables held bridges, turbines, signals, and student machines. Behind glass, the repaired factory model repeated the sequence that had frozen at the hotel. Molly stood beside a project made from cardboard, 3 colored lights, and a small runway. The metal airplane rested at one end. Her project used wind, runway clearance, and a mechanical verifier before allowing takeoff. If an electronic signal failed, the airplane waited until the system knew which information to trust. A judge asked why she needed 3 checks when 2 usually agreed. Molly looked toward her father. "Because usually is not the same as safely." Evan smiled. Audrey arrived carrying the corrected Helios patent record. Evan's name appeared first, followed by the engineers who completed the redesign. She placed it near the entrance rather than above Molly's table. "This belongs to the lab," she said. Evan nodded. Recognition mattered. It simply no longer needed to occupy the center of every room. The judges asked Molly to demonstrate a fault. She disconnected the wind sensor. One light turned red. The second remained green. The third verifier detected the missing signal and kept the airplane from moving. Then she restored the connection. All 3 lights aligned. A small motor guided the metal airplane down the runway without shaking the repaired wing. Parents applauded. Evan's phone vibrated inside his pocket. The screen showed an urgent call from Novacore. A live factory test in Ohio had produced a new diagnostic pattern. For 1 second, the old instinct returned, urgent work and people expecting an immediate answer. Across the table, Molly's name was announced for the Safety Design Award. Evan silenced the phone without opening the message. Priya was leading the Ohio test. The review team had authority. Helios no longer depended on one person ignoring his life to keep everyone else safe. He stepped beside Molly for the photograph. She handed him a paper badge made with a blue marker. It read, "Evan Hartley, Molly's dad knows when to stay." Audrey read it and smiled. That may be the only title no board can revise. Evan pinned it over his shirt. Across the laboratory, the Helios model continued moving. When two sensors disagreed, the third circuit waited, checked, and chose the safe response. Grace's wing symbol appeared in green on the monitor. Molly leaned against her father as the camera flashed. Years earlier, Evan reached a hospital room too late because he believed work could not wait. Then he spent 4 years believing protection meant abandoning work that mattered. Both choices came from building a life with no safe response when responsibilities collided. A good system did not pretend conflicts would never happen. It created another path before they did. The airplane's repaired wing held. So did Evan.